Are books inherently political? Is there a political message in every book? Short answer, no. Roll the credits. Oh, you're still here. I already answered the question, although to be honest, I don't think it's that simple of a question to answer. I really thought this was a simple question at first, but the more I looked into it, the more I realized this answer became more and more conflicted. So, why did I give a flat out no at the beginning of this video? Well, a few weeks ago, at least to me, a topic like are books political was just a talking point, and to be honest, I didn't even find it to be an interesting one. To be honest, a few weeks ago, I really did find it to be a boring topic. There was really no chance I was going to do a video on whether or not books are political. I kind of found it to be a pointless topic to talk about, similar to how I thought it was kind of pointless to talk about whether or not book talk was killing intellectualism. I honestly found a lot of those videos about the dying intellectualism of book talk to be kind of dumb. Well, it turns out in hindsight that some of those arguments are not as dumb as I thought, at least not to some people. It turns out these conversations were highlighting a major problem in the book community. And I really think that problem is at the core of this are books political discussion. As much as I would love to dive right into this discussion on whether or not books are political, I think I need to cover some current events first. I am not exaggerating when I say for this portion of this video, I feel like I'm walking through a minefield. Genuinely, this is the tensest I've ever been writing a script or making a video. I feel like with one wrong phrase, I can completely nuke my author platform, and not the fun type of nukes in Operation Arc. If you're new to this channel, by the way, my name is Patrick Down, and Operation Arc is my current work in progress. Anyway, this week, the United States of America elected a new president, and that president turned out to be the old president. Now, what does this have to do with this conversation? Well, in a reaction to the election, the book community collapsed into chaos on social media. And I'm not really going to get into it, but I feel like a big reason that happened is that social media has caused us to be so polarized on topics. And that's because the algorithms push the most extreme content to get more views. Here we go. I found the responses that a lot of the book community creators had to be completely unacceptable. The first responses that I found to be highly inappropriate were the bookish unfollow parties.
Reader unfollow party. Yes, you heard that correctly. If you voted for Trump, go ahead and hit unfollow. If you voted for Trump and then started telling the internet that book talk is not political, go ahead and hit unfollow. If you voted for Trump and then told people that book talk is just supposed to be escapism, go ahead and hit unfollow. If you voted for Trump and then started telling the internet that they can agree to disagree to their basic human rights, go ahead and hit unfollow. Reader unfollow party.
Now, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I find the idea of telling people who voted for the other candidate that they're no longer welcome in the book community to be unacceptable. However, a lot of people liked it and actually followed the script because of it. So I guess I can tip my hat to that. I'm not wearing a hat. And then what I honestly think happened is I think some people thought it was a good idea, and then other people just did it because they saw it gain followers. For whatever reason they were posted, posts like this were all over social media. Regardless on if books and book talk are political or not, I don't think that should push anyone out of the community. I made a post talking about this, and one of the major comments was books are political. That's honestly the reason why I said no, books are not political in the beginning of this video. Books being political is not an excuse to make posts like that acceptable. And keep in mind, the post I made was really about not spreading hate through politics. Here, I'll play for you now along with some of the comments, and believe me, some of the comments were absurd. Unfollow me if you voted for president. No, 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 no. This is not what the book community should be like. I've seen a lot of hate in the Bookstagram community in the past few days, and I think it needs to stop. It's been unfortunately brought to my attention that a lot of book reviewers and authors have been getting hate messages after talking about their political views. In particular, authors are getting messages from people saying they can no longer support their work after they heard their political views. Personally, I believe that you should still be able to enjoy a book, even if the author has different views on certain political issues than you. However, that's not even what I'm going to argue here. If you believe you can no longer support an author due to their beliefs on an issue, there is no reason for you to direct message them about that. That's like giving an author a 1-star review on their book and then emailing them to tell them how much you hated it. In addition, I've also been made aware of creators in the book community who are making lists of authors who did not vote the way they wanted them to and posting them so people can unfollow them. That is unacceptable. Not only is this unacceptable, but it's also childish, and it really makes me wonder what types of creators think they have the right to tell people what creators they can and can't follow. Just because I have a following on social media does not give me the right to blacklist other authors. In fact, that's why I haven't mentioned any accounts that have done any of this in this post. I know that somehow, for some reason, I'm gonna lose followers from this post. And you know what? I'm okay with that, because if this post somehow lessens the hate in the author community just a bit, it's worth it. If you disagree with this post, I'm not gonna tell you to unfollow me, because that would be hypocritical. Instead, respectfully tell me why you disagree in the comments and we can have a civil conversation about it. That post spread a bunch of negative comments and I lost like 300 followers, but to be honest, I expected it. What really caught me off guard was how many people DM'd me privately after that post to kind of support me. A lot of them were thanking me for my message, and the reason they didn't post that in the comments was they were afraid of the backlash. And believe me, there's a lot of backlash in the book community right now. Anyway, after making that post, I lost a lot of followers within an hour, and a lot of them were commenting about how books are political. And again, I really don't understand how books being political makes it okay to kick people out of your community. But you know what? It's their platform. They can do whatever they want, but of course they took it further. After making that post, a lot of people call me sexist and racist for voting for a convicted felon, which was really weird because I didn't vote. I was actually put on several red lists for being a Republican author, even though I didn't vote. Now, let me just say here that I'm not proud that I didn't vote, but I'm an honest person. I looked into all the candidates, and I'm not just talking about Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. I looked into all the independents, and I really could not find a candidate where I felt like I wanted to vote for them. The candidates this year, like the last 12 years, were absolutely terrible. And the way I honestly like to look at not voting is it's a sign to the parties that I want a better candidate. You don't think both parties are looking at the percentage of registered voters who didn't vote this year? Now, before any Democrats blame me for their party's loss, first of all, your party lost because your candidate sucked. Second of all, I live in New York City, so I did not cause any of this. Honestly, I could go on such a rant right now, but the only real reason I even bring this up is the fact that I did not vote for Donald Trump, but I was still put on a red list. Do you see the problem there? What gives another creator the right to assume who you voted for and then put you on a blacklist? I don't have any books out yet, so it doesn't really matter for me unless people want to review bomb Europa, and in that case, go for it. It's on Wattpad. I know it sucks. For the record, I did write it in a week. Seriously, I wrote it in 1 week. It was a challenge I did. But do you see how we shouldn't be blacklisting authors for who they voted for when you don't even know who they voted for? Also, like, the whole point of democracy is not punching people for who they voted for. You're threatening to hurt an author's livelihood because you didn't like one of their opinions. If you choose yourself to no longer support an author because you can't agree with their opinions, that's fine, but you can't blacklist them. Anyway, I made a skit on this topic and I feel like it expresses my opinions on it perfectly. Of course, the comments were still terrible. Take a look for yourself. I just made a list of authors that I believe voted red, that way you can unfollow them. I feel like dividing the book community over politics does not make any sense. Books are political. So are open dialogues between people with unique opinions that could be shifted through reading. Maybe recommend some of the books that influence your opinion while also reading some books that influence other opinions. That way you can at least understand why people have them. Well, it's obvious who you voted for. Actually, I didn't, which brings up another concern. You may be punishing authors who actually voted blue but are also having open-minded discussions in the comments. Well, you're blocked. I don't have to talk to anyone who's sexist or racist. This is real life. I'm still here. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to publishing my usual non-political content. That's the problem with people like you. You can be silent because you're not losing your rights. I'm speaking up. No, you're not. You just purge your platform of everyone who doesn't agree with you. You're basically just talking into an echo chamber. If anything, you're making people who are undecided voters less likely to vote with you in the future. Well, they wouldn't like my content anyway. Like books, my content is political. They were following you. They liked your content until you said they weren't welcome in the community and then started threatening with blacklist. Yeah, well, you're privileged. We spent the last 3 days arguing about the politics of book talk when 40% of the world population isn't allowed to vote. Let's face it, we're all privileged. The reason I didn't outright say books are political in the beginning of this video is I feel like so many creators are using it as an excuse to spread all this hate. Books being political is not an excuse to exclude members of the community for voting differently than you. One commenter, and I can't remember who it was or if it was on my post, but they said books are political but not partisan, and I love that. I honestly feel like the books are political argument has almost become an if you don't agree with me, then you're dumb argument. It kind of reminds me of that anti-intellectual book talk debate where people were arguing that books are becoming dumber because of book talk. Like the contents of books are becoming less sophisticated because of book talk readers. People were talking about how book talk is this huge problem and it's killing intellectualism. I actually don't think the books that get popular on book talk are a problem. And believe me, I don't like the books that get popular on book talk. I'll admit there are a lot of popular books on book talk that I don't think are written all that well. And I haven't read all of them, but from the ones I've read, I have always been pretty disappointed. That being said, I actually think that's a good thing. I think that a lot of these books get so popular because they're beginner friendly. The barrier to entry to read them is lower. They're also a lot more entertaining than some of the classes just preach their message on and on through block paragraphs. As an author, I honestly think these popular book talk books are great because they get people into reading. Once people are in the door, they're more likely to read more books. I love sci-fi, and for the longest time, I really wasn't into reading because every time I would try to read a book, I would get super confused. The barrier to entry for sci-fi readers can honestly be brutal. Honestly, getting slightly off topic, one of my goals for Operation Arc is to have the book be very beginner friendly. I want to tell a story that both beginners and experienced readers of the sci-fi genre will love. I feel like a lot of the creators who talk about the dying intellectualism of book talk are the same creators who are now saying book talk is political. Also, I think right now is a really important time to mention that I don't think the message that books are political is a bad thing. I think a lot of people in the community are using it as an excuse to cause problems, but I also think it could be used for good. I totally think that you're passionate about politics and you love to read books that include politics, you should talk about that. I just feel like instead of yelling at people and calling them dumb on the internet, it might be a better idea to kind of talk about your favorite books and how they inspired your own political views. Maybe recommend books that inspired your worldview. The real problem is social media platforms do not promote that type of content. The algorithms want you to say something completely absurd, that way it gets a big reaction. Hypothetically, what's going to get a bigger reaction? Me talking about the books that inspired me to vote liberal or conservative, or me kicking half the community out of the community because I don't like the way they voted? Also, I feel like I'm doing a lot of jabbing at one side here. For the record, the conservatives are not in the clear. Some romance authors that I follow have been posting some of the hate messages they're getting from people, and they're absolutely disgusting. I don't think it's as relevant to this Our Books political discussion, but messaging a woman, your body, my choice is absolutely disgusting behavior. Now, going back to this book talk is political conversation and this anti-intellectualism conversation of book talk, I can't help but feel that a lot of the posts who are talking about that kind of have this feeling of I'm smarter than you. In a lot of those posts, and not all of them, I think some of them are actually really well done and they actually really made me think about things and how I viewed them. But I feel like a lot of those posts, it kind of felt like the creator was kind of just talking down to you. Especially watching these books are political posts, it feels like you're being talked down to. Honestly, some of the anti-intellectualism of Book Talk posts were kind of implying that if you did like the books that were popular on Book Talk, you were less intellectual. Ironically, when diving way too deep into these books are political posts, I found the people who were screaming the loudest about books being political were also the people who didn't quite understand that if a book was political, that doesn't quite mean it supports their politics. That goes back to the comment before. Books are political, but not partisan. The argument that books are political means liberal good, conservative bad is a really dumb take. In a lot of these Book Talk is political rants, the video would end with the conclusion that all the Trump voters were the bad guys in all the stories they read. For people bragging about being able to decipher political messages that other people miss in books, that's a pretty shallow take. One commenter to one of the videos I posted before said I must not have understood the Hunger Games, which actually kind of resonated with me because I just read the Hunger Games. And for what it's worth, I can really see how it would resonate with liberals, but I also can see how it would resonate with conservatives. And this honestly might be a case if you can see the message you want to see when you read from one side rather than reading with an open mind. Although personally, when I read a fictional story, politics really are not on my mind at all, but I'll leave that for the end of the video. First of all, a huge theme of the story is economic struggles, which inspired a lot of conservative voters. Also, while it's not the same, because I do believe the main goal of writing the Hunger Games was to tell a story, I do see some similarities between the capital and the cities as opposed to the rural districts. In a way, I can honestly see conservatives viewing the capital as big government gone wrong. Now again, this is a thought experiment. This is not actually what I think of the Hunger Games. In fact, I would really hope that most people would not base the way they voted on the Hunger Games because the Hunger Games is a fictional story. Anyway, the point of my thought experiment was to show that books being political does not mean books being liberal. That wasn't the question though. I finally made my way back to the core question. The question is, are books political? I've seen the argument that reading and the right to reading is political, therefore books are political, and I don't really like that argument. I get its merits, but it kind of feels like a gotcha without diving in. I have the right to speak doesn't mean everything I say is political. Most of what I say is stupid. Also, while I just thought of it, there's a lot of fear-mongering going around right now about book bans. For the record, I disagree about a lot of the books being banned in Florida right now. I do want to clarify what a book ban is though, because I feel like a lot of people don't know what it means. A book being banned does not make it illegal. Like, you can buy a banned book. I have a bunch of them on my bookshelf. From my understanding, these book bans mainly take these books out of government property, such as schools. Again, though, you can still buy that book from a bookstore. I also think it's a pretty complex issue. I read a lot of books in school that I felt were really inappropriate for my age. A lot of those inappropriate books were rated YA, by the way, which is a whole other topic. When my book finally comes out, I definitely think it should be nowhere near a middle school library. That being said, I also find banning books like To Kill a Mockingbird to be absurd. While we're on the topic, I do want to point out the hypocrisy of making content about book bans and warning about them, and then also making red lists for conservative authors. Sorry, that was a longer aside than it should have been. Dismissing the idea that all books are automatically political, I decided to ask myself, are there any books that are not political in nature at all? Can you write a book without political ideas? Finding a book that was not at all political in nature was not easy. To be fair, I did give the people who argue that all books are automatically political the educational books because I do understand that the right to education is a political topic, so I'll give you those. Really thinking to myself, and maybe I'm missing one, but out of all the books I've ever read, the one I feel is the least political is definitely Solaris. To be honest, Solaris really fits the original argument I wanted to make about this topic before the election. Every book is going to have some sort of deeper meaning, and while that could be a political meaning, I argue that it could also be a philosophical meaning. My argument was going to be that a book could be philosophical rather than political. For those of you who haven't read Solaris, it's a very philosophical sci-fi book. The book really centers around our inability to really comprehend or communicate with intelligence other than our own. I really thought for a moment that Solaris was the perfect example of a book that was not political. Solaris is purely philosophical rather than political in nature. But I guess you could say it has a message against expansion and exploration, which I guess means it is sort of political. I guess the political message is technically there. Which honestly brings me back to the first thoughts I had on this topic, that this is a dumb topic. Sure, books are political because you can make anything political. Just because books share political ideas, however, does not mean you have to go into reading a book with a political mindset. You're not dumb because you read The Forever War and you didn't realize it was a metaphor for Vietnam. Well, actually, in that case, you might be a little bit dumb. But it's okay. I'm just teasing. I purposely picked a terrible example. My point is, sure, there are a lot of books written to share an author's political beliefs, but that doesn't mean that all authors write books to be political. There are authors out there who just want to write an entertaining story. There's nothing wrong with using books as an escape from the real world, and sometimes that means an escape from politics. You don't need to view reading as this act of rebellion. You can, but you don't have to. I think this whole book talk is political thing started in a good place. Some people were upset about all the politics in the book community because they use the book community as their safe space. Authors and book reviewers pointed out that books are how they express their politics. And I think what genuinely happened with this community is in the heat of the moment, some people took those politics too far. Like I said multiple times in this video, I think there are better ways to express your political views on book talk rather than kicking people out of the community. After a lot of reflection, I genuinely feel like politics do have a major role in the book talk community. However, I'm also going to say that political hate has no place in the book community. And unfortunately, in my opinion, I feel like some people view those things to be the same thing, which they're not. As I'm writing my book Operation Arc, I do not have a political goal in mind. My focus is definitely more on philosophical questions such as what is the meaning of life, or the lack of thereof. Above all the messages though, Operation Arc is meant to be a fun, entertaining read. My prime objective in writing Operation Arc is to entertain readers. If you also get a message calling to disarm nuclear weapons from it, that's cool too. Let me know in the comments what you think about this Our Books political discussion. Also, if you disagree with any of the points I made in this video, let me know in the comments. I'll gladly have a discussion about it. And remember, regardless of your political opinions, please treat the rest of the book community with respect. Thanks for watching.